Now, it's rare when I read a horrible game review, but I do admit that I, in a way, need their existence. And you, the viewer, you need them too, so we can all gather together, extend our arms not in one direction, but maybe in a separate direction, and point and laugh at a obviously fake games journalist. It's great when we can point out that somebody obviously doesn't care about video games. They only care about social justice. And it's great to expose these writers so they can just move on already and go write for BuzzFeed. Now, Gamespot, which is mostly a meme these days, recently reviewed Days Gone. Now, Days Gone, I admit, is not a game that originally appealed to me. But every time I see one of these woke video game reviews, I'm inclined to purchase the game out of spite. If I wasn't suffering under the crippling weight that is my backlog, I would have purchased it. But for now, I will just meme on this review. Now, GameSpot gave the game a 5, which to me seemed low. A 5 is like borderline awful. Now, you could say they decided, it's mediocre, and maybe, but Days Gone is not a 5. From what I've seen and the reviewers that I trust, I would have thought maybe a 7 is more reasonable. The game has technical issues. It is, quote, yet another zombie game, and the open world genre is a bit tired. That doesn't mean that people don't enjoy the game, and that doesn't mean that it should affect the specific score of this specific game in this incident. So I was interested when a 5 came through. When we look at the good, the Nero storyline gives an intriguing, fresh details about a particular zombie apocalypse, and clearing a camp, infestation, or horde can be satisfying for its own sake. There are plenty of bads with this game, including the way the weapons work and things like that, but Deacon has no real character development, and the game is uncritical of his more dubious actions. So what does that mean? It's an apocalypse. Deacon does some bad things, but the game doesn't tell you they're bad. Interesting. Another con. The Deacon relationship with Sara is flat and unconvincing. Okay, that's reasonable, but it seems like you're just reviewing the story. Many narrative arcs end abruptly or lack interesting or meaningful conclusions. Okay, another story. Critique. The open world activities grow repetitive. Okay, that's a critique of mostly all open world games. And poor pacing takes the excitement out of horde fights. Okay, so basically I think I can summarize how this game review was formulated. They didn't like the story. All right, so none of these cons seem technical at all. They seem very generic drawbacks that someone could do in basically any video game. I could have written these pros and cons without actually playing the game. Now, let's not interact with Kaylee because that, in my experience, is what these people want, but let's instead have a conversation together on how you might have led to such a terrible video game review. Now, Kaylee allegedly finished Days Gone's main story in about 55 hours, splitting time between a base PS4 and a PS4 Pro. 735 days had gone by in the beginning, and 855 had gone by the time she reached the end. Review code was provided by Sony. All right, well, so you didn't pay for the game. You played a game you didn't like, and you were more worried about the narrative of the story and what it meant for social justice issues. And why might I be saying that? Well, we're going to get into that. But you see, Deacon is selfish, and it's simply boring that a game is uncritical of him. Well, it's the zombie apocalypse. I'm pretty sure you are only worried about taking care of yourself in that scenario. That is a totally understandable reaction. And to say that Deacon does not learn anything over the course of the game, and the story is concerned with validating his actions and feelings above all else. When one character urges him not to end somebody in cold blood, Deacon proves that murder is better than mercy. A boozer nearly breaks through to Deacon about letting it go, but Deacon learns something new about Nero and clings to his hope even harder. Deacon also has a policy where he doesn't kill unarmed women, which does not affect the story in any way and goes completely unexamined. There's no introspection here. Deacon is selfish, and it's simply boring that the game is uncritical of him. So it sounds like this writer has a problem with a gruff white male protagonist. I'm not sure. I think, the story is a fair critique, but to focus exclusively on the story, you might want to talk about, some technical issues in the game. After about 10 hours into Days Gone, you're thrown into a hunting tutorial, which is apropos of nothing. The over-the-top libertarian character takes you out with a rifle and shows you how to track a deer. Although you've already had a tracking tutorial, you're then tasked with getting more meat for you and your buddy simply because your supply is running low, something you never have to do again. You also don't cook or eat. You can only donate meat to camps around the map and earn a negligible amount of money and earn trust with them. Well, you never really, eating, I guess, is built into Red Dead Redemption, but you aren't like eating a particular meat. You just eat a generic stew. I don't really care that, whatever I bring in, I'm not eating in particular. That seems like a really, really nitpicky thing, but hey, whatever, a fair critique. Things like many Days Gone hunting exists just to be there. Okay, fair. The first act, about 20 hours or so, is set up at quite a few narrative arcs. 2 years, I don't want to spoil anything, but the motorcycle is central to everything you do in Days Gone. Getting anywhere, including by fast travel, requires your bike. You might want to save while in the outworld. You better be next to it. Getting off your bike is a matter of your entrance and your exit. You need to stop far enough away from enemies so they don't hear you coming. This is a good thing. That said, gas and other loot do regenerate. Now, if it breaks down or runs out of gas, you're basically screwed. This is true. I think a fair critique of the game is the way that your fuel doesn't last long and you're constantly seeking more fuel. Your bike, maybe you need to trade in to get better mileage. A bike that gets better gas mileage or something. But, outside of that, the review is pretty basic, but I thought the score seemed really low. This is a 7 game, I think. So why might it have gotten a 5? Well, I took a look at who reviewed it. This person is a senior editor. Here's the review posted on April 25th, and here is my favorite screenshot from the entire game. The man looking at a girl's butt. Okay, all right, so I'm starting to learn a little bit more, but then I had a lot to say about this game. Here are some random tidbits I didn't include. Okay, maybe this provides more context on your review score. First point, all the freakers are apparently white. Can we get more wheelchair zombies, please? Wasn't this a complaint about Resident Evil 2 that too many of the zombies were black? Come on. Who cares? And, oh, by the way, it might shock you to know that there's actually narrative around this. Yes, Kaylee, something you completely forgot to mention is that, from what I understand, the game actually addresses this. And the infection itself causes a cellular degradation, which causes the skin pigment to fade near albinism, meaning making them look like albinos, and that it functions a lot like cancer. So it also stands to reason that things like hair and eye color might also change, and so on and so forth. So the game itself addresses it. I'm supposed to believe you played the game, but you completely ignored the fact that they built in actual reasoning for why the skin color of the freakers is white. The biggest technical issues were patched out during the review period, but the game chugs on a regular PS4, and which is actually a very fair critique. Now, I'm somebody who has a PS4. I have a PS4 Pro behind me, but I'm afraid to open it because it's like the special edition Spider-Man one. And we're so close to the next generation that I'm probably fine, given that most of the games I play are on PC anyway. But here's another thing. I hate the phrase, "old lady." So, okay, I refer to my wife as old lady, ironically, but all right. So you didn't like how old lady, and you didn't like that there were too many white zombies. Oh, and I can confirm that promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike is not the only thing that is said. There's even a callback to it. So she doesn't like the spicy talk. So maybe it stands to reason. Now, obviously, I can't know this, but it would seem that some of the SJW issues that maybe got edited out of this, or maybe she tried to hide, were maybe false. Maybe they were artificially lowering your score for Days Gone. Now, I'm not saying Days Gone is a 10. I'm not even saying it's a 9. I'm not saying, I think only a hardcore fan would probably give it an 8 in its current state with the patches and everything. But to give it a 5 seems like there's an artificial reason you're dragging that down. And I wonder why that could be. I wonder why. But interestingly enough, you go on, but you could say fat equals gross/bald is just so lazy and harmful. It's especially frustrating in kids' movie where all the female characters have the same body type. That really does affect people's self-image. Okay, so this is somebody that had a problem with fat Thor as well. Somebody who... I lost 30 followers for these tweets. So somebody who counts their followers, who cares about how many followers you have on Twitter? Could you imagine following it that closely to see exactly how many Twitter followers you lost? It doesn't even make that easy to find. And the inevitable, I'm going to delete Twitter off my phone for a while. It just makes me bitter and angry, and I don't like that. Ha! So people questioned you, in my assumption, why you gave Days Gone a 5. They went to your Twitter, saw you were a radical SJW, and then they started to put things together. And even if you look at these comments, some of them are very kind. Here's my 2 cents from nearly a decade-old GameSpot follower. Kaylee, you are welcome to give the game a 5 out of 10, but please be informative and factual about your review. As a game reviewer, your opinion is gold. You are meant to be an extremely experienced gamer with an incredibly high knowledge concerning video games. Let this show through in your words. Let us know what makes this game work or not. You are not reviewing a movie, but a video game, and video games quite different. These are tactile, demanding experiences. How is it to control the main character? How does it feel when you use your weapon? How does the game reward your time? How does the sound design? Gee, I wonder where you might find this kind of stuff. Maybe exclusively games.com, but that's neither here nor there. Let us know about technical performance side of the game by going deeper with frame rate and resolution. This is why YouTube channels like ACG are soaring super high right now, because people want to know the words coming from the mouths of extremely passionate and knowledgeable people. I'm sure you have it in you to convey such information, but after all, you are a video game reviewer. I understand, as long gone are the days of passionate GameSpot reviewers like Greg Kazavin and Kerry Goskis and Jeff Gesterman. I pronounce all those names wrong. I understand the review formats have changed, but I believe being informative. Well, lucky none of us leftist mainstream media is going to affect sales. It was the best-selling UK physical copy without taking the US into account. User reviews across the board are an 8 to an 8.5. Keep politics out of game reviews. So even though she tried to be stealthy, she was caught. And we look at the Metascores, Metacritic, and as predicted, okay, so the game is a 7, like I said. You know, critics themselves have put it at a 72. Users give it a 7.9 on 2,000 ratings. So I absolutely trust the aggregate rating of 2,000 people who are taking the time to enjoy the game. Now, this is why I like Steam, because I know they actually bought the game. But in this case, you've got a high 70s score, which is, I think, reasonable. If they had patched out some of the grindiness, if they made the weapons work better instead of having to use melee for everything, it might have been a mid-8 game. But even critics give it a 7. So why does GameSpot give it a 5? Well, I'm pretty sure we know why. I mean, especially Days Gone beat MK11 for UK's #1. We know the game isn't perfect, but when you don't point any of it out, and you end up just giving it 5, we know there's something more to it. Everything aside, I genuinely trust GameSpot reviews. With that said, I cannot for the life of me understand how it got a 5 out of 10. This game is a solid 8 for me at least. Even if you look at the user reviews on GameSpot, it has an 8.5. I'm sorry, but this is completely biased. This is definitely one of the better titles this year. Great gameplay, beautiful world. It requires you to actually pay attention to your environment. The only gripe I have is some minor technical bugs and annoying menu system and somewhat odd pacing. Everything else aside, the game is solid, and I think GameSpot needs another set of eyes here. If we're giving it a 5, you're saying it's only slightly better than Fallout 76 and worse than Anthem. That is a savage point. Good for you, Ghost Wayne. This is why the comment sections are still always gold, because you get real gamers, people who really played the game. Pathetic attempt, Kaylee. No wonder you ran off Twitter. Keep your politics out of our video games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.